paper that's been um, shown over at Safe Space in order to refute the usefulness of ABX testing, I guess. I'm really not sure what this is. So basically, this was I was responding to a thread where, of course, the usual suspects are claiming these magical differences between mic preamps, and you got to use this mic preamp for this source, and that mic preamp for this other source, and this one's warm and that one's thin. And unless you buy something that was made in the 50s or whatever, it can't possibly be good. And, we've seen time and time again. Sorry, let me pause this really, 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 really quick. Um, okay, sorry about that, man. With this Black Friday sale stuff, we got to get all our plugins in order, and things are kind of crazy right now. So sorry. I'll be right back on this in 2 seconds. This is the trouble with doing live stuff. Let me just remove this. Why can't I send this? Okay, there we go. All right, sorry. Okay, so this came up. This was another one of these ones where people are claiming all this magical stuff about mic preamps, when we know, in the reality-based community that for the most part, these mic preamps sound pretty much the same. And every time people are tested, they can't reliably tell the difference between them. They can't pick which one is which. All these claims that they make seem to go out the window. And, well, you know how it is. People never back up religious claims, and that's really what these are. I'll read you a little bit of the context here. Let's see. So I had said, and I know this is kind of trolling, but I mean, this is what I always have to say, because people make these claims as if they're real. It's as if somebody kept coming up to you at the gas station and say, "Hey, put this diesel in your tank. It's gonna give you way more gas mileage and speed and performance and whatever than the gas that you're supposed to put in your car." And when you ask them, why should I think that? Do you have any evidence for that or whatever? They just tell you, well, if you could afford it, you would know, or in my experience, or, they're never going to give you actual evidence. They're just going to gaslight you and, tell you, well, if you had ears, you'd be able to hear it. You know. Anyhow, so what I said is, the funniest part of this thread is that all of those pontificating and giving magical descriptions of the different preamps wouldn't be able to pick which is which in an ABX test. And we know that because it's been proven, right? Sound on Sound really nailed this one home. And I think you guys have seen from me from time to time, I'll put I'll put some money up or gear up or whatever for people to actually provide any evidence, and they never take it. They always run away. So this guy, Elmo Hope, says, I think in this forum there are a fair number of members who have a higher than average probability to discern differences. Fine. Then they should be able to discern the differences, but they can't. But so what? I don't know what you're saying. Generally, ABX testing is more commonplace and in the thoughts of the audiophile community as opposed to pro audio gear world. What? What does that matter? Who cares? What does that have to do with the reliability of an ABX test or your magical claims about mic preamps? He says, there's been statistical analysis of these tests, but it's been debated what they mean. No, it's not debated what they mean. Look, a coin flip is 50-50, right? Lots of times you say statistically chance, you're going to get the right thing 33% of the time, whatever, in an ABX test, maybe. If you can't determine which one is which, it's exactly what it means. What do you mean that it's debated what they mean? It means you can't tell which is which. And if you do determine it every single time, if you had 100% probability in the ABX test, 100% where you got the result you claim you could get, that tells you plenty. If you got 75%, that tells you plenty. 50%, I don't know. Maybe that's that could be some statistical anomaly or whatever. But if you got a pretty high percentage hit, it tells you a lot. So there's this article, or I guess it's a paper. I can't get to the whole paper. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He says there's an excerpt from an article about this that summarizes it. Audio listening tests may seem simple, but there is much complexity to conducting and analyzing their results. Don't care. Is that poisoning the well? What does that have to do with this? That we have two pairs of ears do not qualify us to run them. Again, what are you even saying here? This is just like poisoning the well here. It's just insults. What does it mean? Or interpret their results. The statistical, and who says that? This is like a straw man of some sort. The statistical analysis of ABX test results is one such aspect. Why? It seems that the authors of tests like the Myers and Morin have farmed out this work instead of owning it and explaining it in the paper. The result is a source of confusion for people who run with talking points of these reports as opposed to really digging deep and understanding the results. So we'll go down there in a second. But he also says, but beyond the conjecture about the truthfulness of ABX testing, what conjecture? In the context of preamps or any other gear for that matter, I think both you and I can agree that every single piece of audio gear sounds different, right? No. If two things test the same in bandwidth, distortion, frequency response, noise, time-based errors. No, they're not going to sound different. They're going to sound the same. And he says, I mean, we choose gear because we perceive it to sound a certain way. Yes, we perceive that because the thing's blue and says Neve on it, it's going to sound better than something else. That doesn't mean it does. He says, I don't know, but I think I could devise a method to skew the normal probabilistic outcomes of ABX tests by training the ears. Sort of like prep SAT courses where it's been proven to have higher test outcomes. Look, if there's a difference, we're going to hear it. How is that skewing it? That's the whole point of the ABX test. If there's a difference, we're going to hear it. If there's not a difference, it doesn't matter how much you can prep for whatever. You're not going to be able to tell which one is which because it's not different. That's the whole point. So this paper's here, but it doesn't really say anything. And when you actually click on it, it just gives you, I'll show you. Here's the PDF. And it just goes to one page. It looks like it's copied out of a paper. Oh, why is this not? There we go. So the PDF that it goes to is two pages. It looks like it's got some kind of commercial in it. It just looks like it's copied off of some page 675 of some sort of thing. Some limitations on formulas for calculating speech hearing loss from an audiogram. Progress report of an acoustic training experiment for profoundly deaf children. I don't know what they're... Okay, standardizing audio tests. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Munson and Gardner. Bell Telephone. Let me read this. I don't know. This isn't a paper. This is just citing some other paper. Let's see. An understanding of the overall process of hearing depends on proper interpretation of the results of many individual experiments. In the field of subjective experimentation, the problem has been complicated by the wide variety of test procedures that characterize the available data. It's not that hard to get a proper ABX test. Is that the issue? If a common technique could be applied to the many different types of auditory tests, such as thresholds of acuity, masking tests, difference alignments, etc., the organization of these data would be facilitated. The purpose of the present paper is to describe a test procedure which has shown promise in this direction, to give descriptions of the equipment which have been found helpful in minimizing the variability of the test results. The procedure, which we have called the ABX test, is a modification of the method of paired comparisons. An observer is presented... Okay, this is actually... So, is this actually the first time somebody proposed an ABX test? Was way back then? This is interesting. So if you don't know what an ABX test, I think they're going to explain it right here. An observer is presented with a time sequence of 3 signals for judgment he is asked to make. During the first time interval, he hears signal A. During the second, signal B, and finally signal X. His task is to indicate whether the sound he heard during the X interval was more like that during the A interval or more like that during the B interval. For a threshold test, the A interval is quiet and the B interval is signal, and the X interval is either the quiet or signal. For a masking test, A is the masking signal, B is the masking signal plus the signal being masked, and X is either A or B repeated. The apparatus for the ABX test is mechanized so all details of the method can be duplicated for each observer and the variability of manual operation eliminated. The entire test is coded on teletype tape to reduce the time and effort of collecting large quantities of data. Okay, that part we don't care about. That's an old technological limitation or whatever. I think that's all they say about it. So what? Okay, so that's what an ABX test is. So this Amir Majinmer, I don't know. So this is Audio Science Review. I'm not really sure what this forum is about. Let's take a look at what Audio Science Review is, because we've heard things called science that were nothing about science before, right? I don't know. We've seen a lot of anti-science people on these kind of things, but maybe. Looks like a forum that I should probably be part of, actually. But so here's from the founder, admin. He says it's a forum post about that article, Statistics of ABX Testing. He says, ABX is by far the most talked about type of listening test on the internet to demonstrate audible differences between two devices or two audio files. You know that some of these, I'll just call them cultists, man. Some of these people who believe in like magical tone wood for electric guitars or these magical mic preamps or microphones or cables or whatever. There have been times when signals completely nulled, and I mean we can go all the way back to like the crazy part, like DAW summing, right? Where we're comparing the two identical files coming out of a DAW, and they absolutely null, where you get no audio at all when you flip the polarity of one of them. These people will often still say that they sound different. So yeah, ABX is probably the most talked about, but null tests are where we really make the rubber hit the road sometimes, because if the thing can't pass if the thing completely nulls, what's the point of an ABX test? Right? I mean, if nothing is there, there's nothing to compare. But I guess maybe in the interest of thoroughness, we could compare the sums of different DAWs that null. I know that's silly. Okay, so he says, as the name implies, the test involves two inputs, A and B, and the listener is asked to vote whether X, random version of A or B, is closer to A or B. People tend to think this is a rather new type of test. I don't care. But its history dates back to a paper published by the Acoustic Society of America in 1950 by two Bell Labs researchers, Munson and Gardner. Here's part of the abstract, and they show that paper. Or maybe that's what they were. Why would you link me? Hold on. Let me check what they sent me on Safe Space. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is what he sent me. That's just the forum post. There's no article here. All right. Let me go back to it. Sorry. Says the modern day instantiation is a bit different in the way the user controls of the switching, but its main characteristic remains that of a forced choice listening test. Much like a multiple choice exam in school, the listener can get the right answer one of that two ways. Wait, what is he saying? The listener can get the right answer one of that two ways. Either actually matching X to the right input, A or B, or guessing randomly and getting lucky. Unlike school exam, however, we don't want to give credit for lucky guesses. We are interested in knowing if the listener actually determined through listening that X matched one of the two inputs. So if so, we know that the two inputs differed audibly. That's true so far. At the extreme above is an impossible problem to solve. Take the scenario of a listener voting correctly 6 out of 10 times. Did he guess randomly and got lucky, or did he really hear the difference between A and B 6 out of 10 times? Either outcome is possible. Yes, we know with statistical anomalies, the probability of you walking through a wall is very low, but given enough time and chances in the universe, who knows, you might be able to do it. So yeah, we've got to look out for random stuff, but that's why you set up pretty high threshold, way above chance, much above 33%. How often have you got a 60% and it's actually been random? I doubt much. And that's the thing, like, if these differences are anywhere near what these people claim, and let's get to the claim. Much of the time, people say you can't have a successful album or a hit song unless you use this specific brand of mic preamp. I mean, that's why these stakes are so high, right? But if that's true, you should be able to hear that thing every single time. So I don't care about 33% or whatever, because that's not going to matter. Okay. So it seems like this is a lot of poisoning the well. So let's see. Let's note the other complexity, which is the fact that a human tester is fallible when it comes to audio testing. Well, that's the whole point of a double-blinded, placebo-controlled study, right? I mean, look, do we question this stuff with our medical system? Like, man, I tell you, drug trials are rigorous, man, and then they have to admit when the result is so low that it might be statistical noise. Think of all the times people get busted for p-hacking. In fact, look at how much craziness is happening in Ivy League academia right now. If people going through these ritualistic college things, and it turns out that all their publisher parish professors are basically committing fraudulent non-science. Anyway, what if, for example, the tester correctly matched X to A but clicked on the wrong button and voted it being the same as B? Okay, what if? How often does that happen? Again, if the difference is there, it's going to be statistically significant. Having taken so many such tests, I can tell you that this is a common occurrence. Don't care. Blind tests rely on short-term memory recall and carefulness, neither of which can be guaranteed to be there during the entire test. Look, these guys are like minimizing. You guys, hopefully you guys, this is just your typical God of the gaps, moving the goalpost argument, right? First, they say that the differences are so severe that no matter what else you do, your song is going to be a dud, and nobody's going to listen to it on Spotify or whatever because you didn't use this mic preamp. It's that different. It's such a drastic, huge difference between these two products. And then now they're complaining that when you're actually testing it, oh, the differences are so subtle you might not be able to ever hear them. Well, if they're that subtle, the end user, the guy listening on Spotify or whatever, is never going to hear that crap. So you... So he says this and other sources of imperfection in the test fixture and methodology mean some number of negatives need to be allowed. Okay, fine. We could allow a large number of negatives and we'd still be where we are right now. If the thing is that different that you claim. So early in Reaper days, I was showing how to make compressor sound like some other compressor using Recomp. And the differences the guy was screaming about were so huge. So I posted up an MP3 comparison of the two. Because, internet was slow back then, and MP3 is about as big as you can get. And so the guy gets on there and says, oh, you'd never be able to tell on an MP3. I go, well, if you can't tell on an MP3, what the hell do we care? Your differences just disappear. That's your God of the gaps. Okay. So he says, how much error is tolerable then? The convention in the industry and research is to accept an answer that has less than 5% probability of being due to chance. Is that the Sigma thing? Inverted, we are 95% sure the outcome was intentional and not lucky guesses. Why 5%? You may be surprised, but that is an arbitrary number that dates back to Fisher's 1925 book, Statistical Methods for Research Workers, where he proposed 1 in 20 probability of error. Is there some magic there? How about 19 or 21? Common sense would say those results should be just as good, but again, people stick to 95% as if it's commandments from above. We don't usually. We really, look, get your thing above 33%, and I'll take a look. And that's usually where we talk about for differences in audio. Don't need 9%. But I tell you what, the way you're claiming stuff, you better get 95%. You better get 99%. And then you may once in a while have hit the wrong button. But if you can't get above 33%, I don't care about errors or whatever. Sorry. You've got no phenomenon there to write home about anyway. Okay. Adding to the confusion is that people don't realize computing this probability of chance is based on discrete value and hence jumps in value. The reduction of one more right answer may cause a jump from 3% probability to a chance of chance to 8%. There will be no intermediate values because between them, as there is no way to get half a right answer or some other fraction. Half of what? If you half tell the difference between two of them, the hell does that mean? This makes it silly then to target a value like 5%, which is not physically achievable value. This is only if you... Okay, so again, this is where you need a large enough sample size. That's the only way I could see this coming into account. or insist that 6% is not good when the next value would be 4%. This is just, man, this is like, you know, when you're trying to argue some facts with somebody and then they just keep saying, hey, your mic's too loud, or I wish you wouldn't use that tone of voice. Hey, we're talking about facts here. Let's get back to the facts. This is just meta. These issues have been the subject of much discussion in the much wider field than audio. Fisher himself opined this, I don't care. People should not stick to the dogmatic 5% value. I don't care. We're not telling anybody to stick to the 5% value. Don't care. Okay, computing significance of results. Moving beyond the threshold, let's discuss how we compute the probability of chance itself. We take advantage of the fact that ABX testing has a distribution that is binomial. The listener either gets the results right or wrong, hence the starting letters by or two outcomes. Yes, for the claims we're talking about here, you're either getting it right or wrong. There is no in-between right or wrong. Sorry. As you have seen so far, yeah, facts are facts no matter what tone they're spoken in. Exactly. As you have seen so far, the more right answers the listener gets, the less chances the outcome is due to chances alone. Let's show you again. As you have seen so far, the more right answers the listener gets, the less chances that the outcome is due to chance alone. Yeah. The picture from the paper is statistical analysis of ABX results using signal detection theory show this pictorially. Is he saying that water is wet or that 2 + 2 = 4? I'm not sure what the point is here. I may just be dumb and not understand philosophy, but I'm not getting this part of it. What are you trying to? Are you trying to make a point? It sounds like a tautology. So the more correct responses you get, the less chance there is for error. Is that the claim? I don't really care. I care that you get a statistically significant amount of correct answers or incorrect answers. To be more confident that the result is not due to chance, more correct responses are needed. Okay, and the sky is blue and the earth is round. You look at all these papers, like in ritual stuff for college, like they make you just write all these crazy papers that they're just stuffed filler. Like, you guys who complain about filler and nonsense, wasted space in animes or stories or whatever, go read some of these papers, man. It's so bad. It's just stuffing stuff. And now you're watching these you're watching like Chat GPT or whatever write people's articles, and man, I don't care what subject you are. You want to fix something. Like the other day I was looking for thicker disc rotors for my bike brakes, and every article I tried to find which one's the thickest, it has to start out with brake rotors are blah 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 blah. They give you a history of it and tell you what they do and stuff, just to fill half a page with nonsense before they get to your affiliate links where allegedly you got an article that probably Chat GPT wrote for you or something. It's just stuffing. I don't know if I want to keep going and torture you. Let me read this paragraph here. It may actually mean something. Notice something fascinating. As the number of trials increases, the percentage of right answers needed to achieve less than 5% probability of chance shrinks. The percentage of right answers needed to achieve less than 5% probability of chance shrinks. So much so that at 160 trials, you only need 56% of the answers to be right. Let me repeat. You only need 56% right answers to have high confidence in results not being due to chance. At the risk of really blowing your mind, we only need 95 right answers out of 160 to achieve 99% confidence. This represents only 59% right answers. Look, this is if you're going to collate and tabulate this stuff a certain way. But no, this is not how we're doing this. Okay, hold on. Right answers for, and who cares about this 95% confidence? This is interesting that this happens. I don't see how this happens. I don't think this is being very honest about how you would do this. I would say that the same percentage should be across the board. It's not going to be, if you're looking for 95%, you're not going to go from 80% to 56%. Look, somebody who's way the hell better at math than me can maybe explain this, but this isn't how we do ABX tests anyway, so I don't think this really matters. Yeah, I get my most of my useful theological information from Magic 8 Ball, and that would give you probably just as reliable of results. So this guy, the non-intuitive nature of the statistical measures what gave me the motivation for this article. In 2014, the Audio Engineering Society paper, The Audibility of Typical Digital Audio Filters in a High-Fidelity Playback System, was published, in which the authors tested whether listeners could tell the difference when 24-bit 192 kilohertz music and versions converted to 44 or 48K, sampling at 24 and 16 bits. The paper stated the threshold for achieving 95% statistical significance was 56% right answers. This set off immediate reaction among the online skeptics who claimed foul by saying that 56% is not much better than 50% probability of a lucky coin toss. They're right. Never mind that the paper in question was peer-reviewed and won the award for the best paper at the AES conference. That alone should have told these individuals they're barking up the wrong tree, but their online arguments being what they are, folks started to rally behind the mistaken notion. There's nothing mistaken about that notion. 56% is not much better than the 50% of a coin flip. What's wrong about that? How is that a mistaken notion? Maybe if you're going to collate statistics this way, fine. Then you're probably right that's how you get to that 95% confidence. We don't care. Give me a test where you get it right more than 33% of the time, and then we'll talk. Okay. I'd like to see the peer review for that paper, by the way. I would love to see it, because I don't really have much confidence that this is being represented correctly. The study uses 160 trials, which is the reason I included the number in the above. We only need 56% right answers to reduce probability of chance. No, to reduce your claim of probability of chance, which you said came from some 1925 way of thinking about stuff anyway. It's not how we do ABX tests. This is interesting, though, because, it's probably right that if you do it this way, you are going to get some crappy statistics. But that's not how you do this. Let's see. So here, let me go to summary. And again, I completely disagree with this way of putting the statistics together. And I know we don't do this with drugs, do we? I hope not. So summary, audio listening tests may seem simple, but there is much complexity to conducting and analyzing the results. So what? That's just poisoning the well. Now we have two pairs. So this is the stuff we read already. We have two pairs of ears do not qualify us to run them. Nobody said that, or interpret the results. Nobody said that. Nobody said you don't even have to have ears in order to do this. So this is just nonsense. I have attempted to heavily simplify this topic in order to get the main points across. So let's say, I like how T-Jump says this. There's going to be novel testable predictions, right? You can come out with good science. You can predict things out of it. What do you predict with this paper? Because I'll tell you what, I predict from ABX tests that if mic preamps sound drastically different than each other, people will be able to pick out which one is which. I also predict that if two different mic preamps measure the same in bandwidth, frequency response, distortion, and noise, that people won't be able to tell the difference between them. And which one of those two really comports with reality, right? Let's see what they're going for here. So Dallas Justice says, in this study, the authors wanted to test whether listeners could reliably hear the difference between two capacitors while with ABX listening tests. They got statistically insignificant results and blamed the ABX format as having stressed the listeners too much. All right. However, they also did the study with simple A/B tests and 3 capacitors. They claimed statistically significant results using A/B tests. What are the pitfalls to using A/B subjective tests versus ABX tests? Of course, a capacitor manufacturer sponsored the study. Okay. I know everybody's going to get on Glenn Fricker, but, lately he's been doing like tests where you have different kinds of guitars and, the super golden ear wine snobs are, I know which guitar is which, and then they can never figure it out. If you blind them, they don't know what the hell guitar is what. But if you show them 2 guitars and then they know which one is which, they can pick it every time. So what? So saying 10,000 trials mean 51% is enough for 5% probability is chance. 20 people doing 8 trials each would be 160 trials. 56 would meet the threshold for 95% significance. I just wouldn't tally it that way. So this guy's saying, this is an interesting one. My feeling is that ABX test is a bit too severe. Not only do you have to hear a difference as in AB, but you also have to label it correctly. Yeah. I mean, I can see that in some cases, but with the claims that people are making, I don't think it's a problem. But you see, he gives these examples. If I play you A, Beethoven String Quartet No. 1, B, Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin, you can probably perfectly ABX it. If I play you A, Beethoven String Quartet No. 1, Albenberg Quartet, and B, Beethoven String Quartet No. 1, Takacs, I don't know how to say it, quartet, I won't be surprised you hear the differences, but do you have sufficient clues to label X correctly? Now, that's true. But if you heard them as different, you would hear them as different. But yeah, you might not be able to right away know which one is which, but you would probably be able to compare A to X. But I don't think that really matters. There's a way around this. Let's see. So he says, Don Hill says, if you consistently hear differences between A and B, you have sufficient clues to say whether X is A or B. The task is to identify X as A or B, not to identify the name of the piece or the quartet. Yes, but I'm not sure that it really gets to it. Yeah, I don't know. I see the problem is that none of this is just look at this digest here. None of this really addresses the claims. If these things are so different, we're going to hear them. I don't care about 5% or whatever. I mean, I'm talking, you're going to get this so often. But we don't even get past 33%. We don't even get to that coin flip stuff, which is kind of crazy. What are we doing here? Let me check some of these. It just seems like, it's just one of those ones where you're like, oh, well, what they say, don't test God. You can't test God. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything that refutes the ABX test. That statistics about 56% or whatever being enough to determine 95% probability of not being chance, fine. But does that show you that there's a phenomenon or not? Because that's what matters here. I don't know where to go with this thing. It definitely doesn't get to the point of what these guys are saying, that you can't use an ABX test to tell the difference between mic preamps. Anyway, I got tons of work to do today, so I'm going to take off and I'll see you guys later. Sorry for the most boring paper ever, but, you know, these guys are pushing it, so